Greetings, my beautiful petals. This is Indie Black here. I wanted to talk about something very important, especially at this time. And this is my first video speaking about a rather serious topic, but given the nature of myself and how I express myself, it will remain rather lighthearted at the same time, just to keep that um, pathway of flexibility and flow open. This is in no way um, or by any means something that is supposed to be imposed on your own views or your own preferences of interaction with others. This is simply, what I've gathered from my own experiences, from my guides, and what I found to be true on my path, along with some others who have aligned with me as well. And I felt it was important to share this because I noticed that at this time there is so much dependency on the external world. And I figured a way to sort of flip that in a positive light would be to regard those external markers in our lives, our friends, our family members, our loved ones, members of our community, and so on, and the importance of establishing healthy, lasting, sustainable, and progressive relationships with others, particularly within the Black community. Um, just a little bit about myself because in the other videos I haven't done much talking necessarily. I am on an adventure. I'm on a quest of rediscovery and remembrance of myself. And this all started, when I was born, but I really got re-sparked about 2 years ago. And, I've just been on this mission ever since of discovering new truths and opening up my mind to, at times, things I felt I was opposed to or that made me rather uncomfortable, but not in the sense of being fearful, more so that I had a curious mind or uh, um, I became very inquisitive to understand why, some things were catching my attention, um, and almost this underlying sense of familiarity. In particular, I've been traveling all around, meeting different types of people, um, learning so much about myself, but also about them and the ways in which the world has been founded um, by use of false information, propaganda, manipulation, any other pseudonyms and synonyms you want to add there. Um, and one thing I noticed in particular was my view of what it meant to be in a relationship with others. Now, when I say the word relationship, I know many will first think of an intimate partnership with either a person of the opposite sex or same sex. And that's not at all what I mean. To break down that word relation, that is um, something that involves, multiple occupants, multiple participants, and there's this equal exchange of energy that's going back and forth. We have a relationship with the earth. We have a relationship with our body, with our mind, with this chair that I'm in. I'm bonded with this. I am in sync, and my energy is now compatible with its energy. Um, and what I wanted to start with is that no woman or man is an island. Um, for the first few times of my life within this journey, I've had to endure some very challenging experiences on my own. And one thing I learned throughout those experiences, there was always someone present, whether or not we spoke every day, um, if they were romantically involved with me, if we even liked each other. There was just always the presence of someone and or something else, other beings, other energetic forces, whatever you recognize as source or divine energy. Some will call this name that was given as God, but I've recognized it as, my own energy that's tethering me to and from all the places that I'm existing. And that includes my past, my present, my future, and you know all the forms of formlessness that I've taken on, etc. Um, and when you realize that no one's an island, you it's funny an island, island in here, these visions that we're living in, we're being projected into our own realities, and that's mingling with others, and so sometimes our realities commingle and can get usurped and fall easy and tangled up with others. It's sort of like, when you make a wish and someone makes a wish that cancels out your wish. Like I wish for world peace and someone wishes for war kind of deal. Um, and with that being said, these other experiences and projections and beings and energies really serve to help us transition and come into further realizations about ourselves not being separate from this one. Um, and, I come from a huge family. So relationship has always been a fundamental part of my upbringing. I was the eldest. I am the eldest born. So this innate responsibility was established within me to be able to commune back and forth with not only my siblings, but also my parents, my elders, my cousins, any friends. You start to take on these different roles with different people. Um, and in these relationships, even outside of your upbringing, where you come from, that root experience that you have really is embedded deeply within us, and it affects how we see the world, how we interact with it, and our capability of even experiencing, relating outside of this world and of this realm, and deeper with spirit and with nature and our truest versions, whom we are always remembering and therefore becoming. So I have some topics written here, that I'll go over, and this is just me speaking live. It's not rehearsed or practiced. I find I do much better under pressure, and it gives a much more authentic viewpoint of where I'm coming from, what my intention is. So before I go further, I want to set some intentions for this broadcast. For those who are currently going through rougher times within your life and are questioning your purpose, trying to discern what's right and what's wrong, just balancing out what's on your plate, and trying to remain in control and firm and secure. This is this time where I encourage you to let go and to become looser and to become freer and to cry and to feel that recklessness that happens when you loosen the reins on your own expectations of how things should be. Because oftentimes, how we think things should be is from a very limited and often selfish perspective, where we make ourselves the protagonists of our own situations. And this is not to say that everything is our fault, but this is, in fact, the opposite of wanting to encourage you that although you do contribute to what you're experiencing, you do have the right to feel how you feel about your own experiences that you're creating so you can be a better judge of what it is that you wish to continue creating or cease creating. This is also for those who have reached certain pinnacles in their life where they've come into realization about what matters to them the most, who have done the work to heal themselves and um, been through those, dark nights of the soul and faced their fears and their demons and their angels and their shadows, every aspect and angle of their own light and darkness. Um, this is your celebration time. This is our heart to heart where we are reflecting on our growth, honoring where we've come from, standing proudly as and where we are in this moment, and preparing, not planning, but preparing for what lies ahead of us, um, with the knowing that we are always um, we are always, you can say, leading ourselves where we wish to be led. I set the intentions for this to be a safe space and for this to be eye opening and heart opening and mind and soul shocking, and possibly bring some relief, some clarity, perhaps bring up some questions that you wish to ask yourself, um, and also a release for myself as I am putting myself in the position to lead by example. I've come across a lot of information and experience, and for a while, I was inflicted by opposing concepts of fear and manipulation, of whether or not, what it is that I have to contribute or share is worthy of, you know, being expressed. And although I've known that innately, I really come full circle because of, especially, when you're aware that you are spiritual by nature and there's nothing that governs you except for what it is that you recognize as something that has influence over you, which should primarily be recognized as yourself. In the simplest of terms, you start to recollect all the experiences and encounters that you've acquired and what they mean to you and how you have been that to others as well. Excuse me. And I also set the intention for all of our guides and way showers and ancestors who are assisting us towards our highest purposes, um, to be present with us. And I'm not an advocate for positive vibes only. I'm not only good vibes and feel goods and light side. We have to invite that darkness in here. We need to and invite some of that pain in here and that stagnancy and that trauma so that all of it can unite and become integrated, and we can leave this feeling more empowered, more aware of ourselves and our creations, and just have a more unified and holistic understanding of what it means to relate to one another. And so, with so much love, um, so be it. Neferashe. So, one of the first marks I had here is communication. Ooh, everyone has a different form of communication, and I'd like to highlight that communication is different from language. Language is a branch of the tree, where communication is the tree itself, extending in both connections and in both directions. Um, and we communicate not only with our words verbally using language, but through our expressions. You just witnessed a very small spectrum of communication using facial expressions. Um, we also communicate non-verbally through our body language. For those who are well aware of this, telepathically is another form of communication. I was just gonna say that, Jinx. It's much more than that. It is vibrational resonance of frequency and mutual comprehension. We also communicate through our responses, not just verbally, but just how we react to things innately without guessing. Very primitive things, but also very sacred. We get a sudden itch on our neck, the burps that come up, um, how I'm swallowing here, and just blinking. It is showing the deeper mechanisms of my human form at work in a subconscious way that I don't have to think about. It is showing that my functioning parts are expressing, you know, um, the form which has been given. And in relationships, all of these different forms of communication are expressed and experienced and exhibited with others. And when we become more aware of ourselves and our various forms of communication, we thus become masters of our relationships with others because we know the form, so then we know the function. We know what the pen is, so we know how to use it, essentially. In relationships, especially now, there has been a disconnect due to interference of artificial intelligence and technology and just very sort of shallow and unhealthy expectations. There are things that we don't say to others that we expect them to understand. And the things that tend to hurt us the most, we often choose not to articulate because we felt we've already said it. We don't want to express it anymore. This is our best friend. We don't want to tell them they're hurting us. This is our mom. We don't want to be disrespectful to our elders. We've been told this is how it is. That's how it should be. We don't want to feel bad about ourselves when it comes to expressing these truths. But at the same time, we're harboring these what ifs. I should have said that. I regretted this. Or maybe I felt I said too much. It's better not to say anything at all. And that really stifles our growth. It stifles or stifles. I feel it's both maybe. But it stops it abruptly. And I felt, this was probably the first on the list because this is what I'm doing right now. I'm communicating these concerns and these observations I've made And one thing I notice is to do daily practices that help you, to become aware of your communication skills. And oftentimes, who we're around exhibit how we communicate because we are often different around different people. Some of our friends are more outgoing, so sometimes we're more outgoing with them, sometimes we're more shy. Sometimes we're more communicative only when we're by ourselves in the comforts of our own room, talking to our forms of entertainment and whatnot. Um, Sometimes we're more communicative as artists, through our drawings, through our paintings, through our music, through our dance. Um, you know, and it's so important that we all recognize this next bullet as it ties in, which is space and freedom to do so. Um, Although this democratic, really republic, which are nothing different from uh, the other, they're no different. They're the same, and they have no effect, truthfully, on us. We've been convinced that we have this notion of freedom of speech, and yet, for whatever reason, we're not allowed to say what we truly feel without punishment. And we often punish ourselves what we feel we should say or shouldn't say, do or shouldn't do based on our own upbringings, what's been taught to us, guilt, shame, all of that. And I found the first step it took for me to open up to deeper forms of communication was to give myself that freedom and to allow myself to step over that boundary I had set for myself because I realized I was outgrowing that space. And it can be concerning when you no longer have those walls around you. If you've felt that you've been walking in the dark, you know, you're constantly in that state, walking by faith in a way, leading foot first, no questions, using your senses to really tap into what's around you, to really gauge what's authentically there in that present moment. And the more we can do that in all of our experiences and really dig into what is occurring at our deepest levels, the more free our relationships will come our relationships will become because we're now expressing ourselves more authentically. We're not bounded by our own limitations and ways of thinking. And so we can tap into those feelings of anger and express that and be able to release it and not hold on to it and not keep us resentful or regretful or holding grudges. We're able to express that pain. We're able to now cry out loud, not muffling our own sounds and our own tears, but allowing it to roar out, to be heard, to be felt, to be experienced, because all of these feelings and emotions want to be experienced. The world around us revolves around our emotions. Everything that we do, especially if you're in a consumer world, is based on your emotions. They need something to sell you. You need a reason to buy something. You must be compelled by it. You must be moved by it. It must bring you some sense of emotion. It must make you happy. It must make you angry. It must make you passionate. All of these things control our daily lives. We have these phones not just because we want to talk to people. We use it for multiple purposes. It allows us to express these feelings with each other. And so communication, and especially when we have freedom in the space to do what you need to do and to communicate how you wish to, although I can say there is a time and place for everything, I find it's better to speak too much than to not say anything at all because it leaves nothing to chance. You can work with too much. You can take away. You can subtract. You can deduct. You can rationalize. You can mold. You can shape. You can get rid of what you don't need and keep what you do need. When you bring little to the table and you need more ingredients to make that final piece, well, you're selling yourself short. And that leads me to expectations and codependency. Selling ourselves short. Often with our own expectations, we sell ourselves short of experiences. And I'm no exemption from this. It's been challenging, I feel, for people in this time to really be at peace with themselves because of what they've put in to their life, because of going to these schools and getting these jobs and these careers and doing all the things that people promised them would guarantee success and achievement and reward and compensation. And so when they're not met with these needs, they're now crushed. It's a form of codependency in itself, and it's externalized um, glory. You know, it's if you do this, if I do this, if we gain this, if we have this, if we don't have this, this is what it makes us. This is how it defines us. This determines my worth and my value and my achievement and my status, my worthiness of participating in life. And it creates this huge divide in, again, that authenticity, especially in relationships. You know, if you really cared about me, you would or wouldn't do this. The expectation sort of villainizes our flaws, our shortcomings, our mistakes, our slip ups. We have those moments where sometimes we just don't deliver as we thought we would. No matter how much we've planned or prepared, something gets in the way. And it's not all the time. It may be rare, it may not be often, but it's almost as if we turn on ourselves if we don't get that desired outcome. It becomes the sort of wanting to honor my family kind of deal. It's where this is my destiny. I have to accomplish, I must win, instead of going through the journey and allowing for things to unfold, we start to demand. And not in the sense of us being in our rightful place, ready to receive our inheritance because we know it is ours. We're demanding from a lackful place, from a poverty mindset, from that we're not able to have things until we have things, instead of understanding that you have everything you need, and what else shall come is merely an addition to that, as other things may go as well. And, sometimes we're codependent on people to help us realize these things, on friends to always be there for us to cry to, on family to always pick us up when we need it, on our lovers and partners and husbands and wives to always be perfect and flawless. You don't have problems. You can't have problems. How are you going to help me with mine right now? I need you to help me with my problems. I need you to meet my expectations because others have failed and I just can't accept that. It can't just be me. This has happened over and over. This has only happened once. I've checked myself. I've reviewed myself. Where is this source coming from? How come you haven't done what you needed to? How come I haven't done what I needed to? My success mirrors my self-esteem. And so I need you to make me feel good so that I can be successful. See, all these expectations of people's roles in our lives keeps us from recognizing that everyone is still that inner child. deep within, perhaps harboring deeper secrets and traumas than they can remember, asking questions that seem to have no answers because they're still blocked by their own expectations of what they want to hear and what they want to be. And this leads me into the next line or topic, which highlights the difference between holding back and holding in. When you hold back, it is a form of self control, of mastery, of diligence, of knowing when to apply things to certain situations and when not to, of what is necessary for certain occurrences. Holding in is harboring, it is leeching and attachment in an unhealthy sense. When we hold in, it is suppression. When we hold back, it is I'm gauging and aware of what's around me first before I let go. All of this seems to have just aligned in order. Like I said, I didn't plan this, I just wrote whatever came to me. And each topic seems to be flowing into the next one more and more. What I learned about holding back, for instance, with me, it's been crying, it's been anger, it's been frustration, it's been my frankness because of the appearance of being rude or a bitch or stuck up or demanding or insensitive or a know-it-all or this angry black woman. I felt the shame of those things and those emotions. That expectation of if I say something, someone else will retaliate. I'll be physically hurt or verbally abused or it will start an argument. No one will want to hear what I have to say without them imposing my view upon their own and vice versa. Without thinking that I'm some sort of member of a secret cult that hates people just because I speak on what I know to be true without fear, without hesitance, and with confidence. Even if that confidence is not always present in every moment, what I am confident about, I do that with pride, with honor. Excuse me. And through holding in, I realized I was keeping people from learning their own lessons by what I had to say. Because oftentimes the eye that sees cannot see itself. And some can. But through these experiences with others, I learned, as telepathic as we may be, not everyone can read your mind. You create your relationships with people by what you choose to express with them. And I notice we don't always express who we are to everyone. Who we show the world is not who we are in our entirety. We are a completely different person by ourselves than we are with other people. And that's just a fact. We have our hidden and guilty pleasures that we never tell anybody. We have our own realms that we take ourselves into. But eventually, after a while, being alone, or at least by yourself, just isn't as fulfilling as having another around to experience that individuality with. Because we are constantly defining each other, sharpening each other like iron, And that leads me to the next line. Recreating yourself and your boundaries to match your growth. So once we realize what's holding us back in our lives and what it is we're holding in, we're able to be flexible, to tap back into creating more space for ourselves, to create new boundaries, loosen up on codependency and expectations, to communicate our needs, and thus adapt to a form that's better suiting for our current circumstances, for where it is that we wish to go and where we are. And that process is so liberating and so freeing. Some of these experiences I've had have been very rough, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, but they've also been extremely gratifying because I've been able to tap into emotions and experiences and memories that I buried so deep within myself I didn't realize that they were causing me more harm being held in than being let out. And I started to form different outlets and ways to express these suppressed forms because I wasn't giving them a voice. And like I said, communication is not language, so I don't have to say anything for it to want to come out. Expression is part of our nature. We exude our own energies, and we're constantly doing that. And when you realize sometimes you don't want to exude that energy anymore, you don't want to be in these places anymore with these people. You realize your passions more brilliantly. You see them more vibrantly. You know what it is you set out to acquire. You know what it is that you wish to set out and acquire and experience. And so you adjust yourself to make it possible. And sometimes that means letting go of certain people, no longer eating certain foods you eat, going to bed at an earlier time, reading a book or two, speaking with someone who challenges your view to put you in the places that you want to get to. And that takes what's next, intimacy. That is the most important relationship you could have with yourself, is knowing what it is that you need, knowing how to relate to yourself, knowing what your body needs, what makes you feel good, what doesn't make you feel good. For example, if you're getting a massage, if someone's massaging too hard, you can't focus on that release because you're tightening up because you're in pain. You must communicate that. Have your needs met. Adjust yourself. And if those needs cannot be met in those environments, go somewhere where they can be met. If that's truly what you desire and want for yourself, you make it happen. And when we have these relationships with others, intimacy is not necessarily sex or sharing your body or kissing or even touching. It is truly that space where we're vulnerable enough to be our freest selves and to show that rawness, to tap into that inner child, and still love ourselves even when we're angry, even when others are angry with us. To have compassion for others even when they hurt you, because you understand that intimacy is about allowing others to express themselves to the fullest, and that others don't always have that space. And I'm not saying let people take advantage of you, step all over you, and let that be an excuse for others to treat you any type of way because now you're trying to be intimate, and this is part of forming relationships, and that's just a part of life. It doesn't have to be that way. But what I am saying is what we can recognize in others oftentimes is not, what we're able to see within ourselves. And so through developing these more intimate relationships, we start to see ourselves in new lenses. And where in a conversation with another, we may be inspired by their viewpoints, their lifestyle, their experiences. It will put us on track towards deeper self-reflection and understanding of ourselves. And that is, especially if we go to the next one, doing it based on honesty. Honesty is extremely important, especially with yourself. Without honesty, there is no pillar to build upon. This world is in destruction because the foundations of these new civilizations that have taken over have not been based on honesty and merit and truthfulness. And so it must crumble because you're building houses on sand with no foundation, with nothing sturdy, with nothing to go back and reassess if need be. No square one, no 0 point, just skipping steps. Lying to yourself is like skipping steps in your growth. Not wanting to get the details of your experience. And when you are dishonest with others, it shows that you don't see any value in your own merit. And some people have reasons for not wanting to hurt other people, or again, the expectation that as a result of being honest, there will be particular reactions such as anger, sadness, grief, resentfulness. And it's up to us to continue making that space for each other to express what we want, even in times of discomfort, because it's going to create such depth in our relationships with other people. And the last line that I have here is trauma. When we are honest about our trauma, and in this case, trauma is not necessarily good or bad, it is merely something that has impacted our lives and changed us. So, for an athlete, that weight training class, those practices are traumatic. You're putting your body into shock. You're having to constantly monitor your progress and to improve. And for others, trauma is, being touched inappropriately by a family member or someone you trust, or having a gun pulled in your face, being robbed, or all those things. There's a spectrum on both sides. Being honest about our traumas is what allows us to create new foundations. It is where the healing occurs, which is why I said I invite that darkness and that light, because we all have it and possess it. That light comes from that darkness. That realization of our experiences and what they mean to us brings us into peace, brings us into power, brings us into no longer being the victim of our circumstances, but the victor of our experiences to come. And I want to let you know that, now our relationship is forming to where, I've set and created one loop, one boundary of how we can improve ourselves when relating to one another. And especially, this is helping me to gauge how it is that I see the world and interact with it. And it is a process. Some days you won't be as patient. Some days you're tired, don't get much rest, you're irritated. And the idea of having to hear someone else vent about something is completely repulsive. And you're tired of hearing the same thing. Now, nagging is different from communicating, I also want to say. You shouldn't have to communicate the same thing over and over and over again, lest you're raising a starseed, a child. And patience is necessary and are one of the lessons you're learning in your own life. And especially not to close the ears. But if you're communicating in the same way over and over and not getting results, that is simply showing that you need to expand upon how you're communicating and add in some variety. Approach different styles, um, and see what comes from that. And if it's really something that matters to you, you will get your point across. And it's more important that you understand where you stand and that you are solid in your own convictions and beliefs, so that when that time comes, you're always ready to keep strengthening these bonds you have in these relationships with others and also form new ones, because it will help you so much on your journey. And I'm surrounded currently by fewer people in my life than I've been used to, but those who have been there for me have been so empowering. And I especially want to thank my sea stars and my sun stars for reminding me that they are beings who love me, and that our sense of unity as a people has not been completely tarnished in the fires of illusion, and that there is still a hand outreached in that darkness as I'm walking by that faith with no walls to guide me and others to pull me into the light and to show me what it is that I've forgotten about myself in those times of isolation, and how to regroup and to reassure each other that we are who we are for greater purposes than what just satisfies, you know, our own expectations. And for those sun stars who are always defending and teaching and protecting, motivating and inviting us to reclaim our thrones and to, you know, get back into our natural form of being, which is that oneness, which is that unity and that perfection of relating and seeing the value that we each have, not only on our own, but especially amongst each other. That is how we build. That is how we all succeed. That is where our self-esteem comes from, because now our individual purposes are contributing to a greater cause, and our purpose is then redefined by our loving exchanges with others. And again, I just wanted to thank you for tuning in to this. I hope that it brought clarity for you, that it was relieving and or just refreshing or eye-opening. Feel free to leave any comments below. Share this if you like. Subscribe to my channel. I feel very proud of this first discussion because, I can really feel that gateway opening for others to step in and give their own views about things they may have been previously afraid to speak about. And a lot of our great leaders have been killed or put in prison or threatened, and it's kept the youth from expressing itself to the fullest because our own parents and those who have raised us have seen that lifestyle and feel it's better to conform and to be safe and to be secure and to have this, that, and the other, while the rest of us are seeing how ineffective that has been because our own upbringings and our own upbringers are stuck in their own ruts. They did all the things they thought they were supposed to and are still unhappy. Excuse me. And so by bringing up this form of relationship, I really hope to bridge the gap between generations and to show that it's important that we teach ourselves our cultures because that's where we come from. That's how we understand the world. And when we're taught someone else's culture, there's no way that we can realize that we're not being ourselves. And so each person we come across is another piece of that puzzle. Our grandmothers, our mothers, our fathers, our great grandfathers, our cousins, our brothers, our sisters, our lovers, all of them are so important because they remind us of ourselves. And each relationship that develops, no matter what challenges it goes through, it's worth you being fully present and as yourself because you'll only gain more insight of what it is you are as an essence so that you can continue being that beyond your physical time here in this place. So again, with so much love, thank you for tuning in and continue to bloom. Peace. I'll be seeing you.